Welcome back to News in Focus. Now, the Department of Home Affairs has withdrawn the 90-day visa exemption granted to Palestinian travelers carrying ordinary passports. The decision follows investigations and recommendations by national intelligence structures, which found that there was a deliberate and ongoing abuse of the 90-day visa exemption. Last month, the arrival of 2 charter flights transporting Palestinians raised red flags when it was discovered that they had one-way tickets into South Africa and lacked the necessary documentation. Joining us now to break down this complex scenario, I'd like to welcome immigration lawyer Ashraf Essop. Ashraf, always good to have you on. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam, and thanks for the opportunity. It's my pleasure.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I guess, Ashraf, your initial reaction to the directive that was issued on Saturday?
Yeah, so we were surprised at the speed at which it actually came. But let's unpack the situation before. So it was after many, many years that Palestinians were given the same status as Israeli citizens and others in the area like Jordanians, to be afforded a visa on landing. Now, South African laws are very Eurocentric. So most European countries, first world countries, so-called, are given that opportunity of obtaining a 90-day visitor's visa on landing. Certain other countries like India and China, which have very, very large populations visiting South Africa, still have to apply for a visa. But fortunately for those countries, they now have a trusted tour operator scheme. So the TTO basically pre-clears the passenger and sees that they are bona fide travelers coming to South Africa. I must say, interestingly, there was recently a case in the Constitutional Court, and one of the justices said something very interesting. He said, look, he wonders why so many pedophiles choose to come visit South Africa and stay in the Cape. Now, that already tells you that there was an abuse of the visa-free system from a certain group of criminals, and the department knew about this or knows about this. Now, what has changed? The Palestinians, after many, many years of lobbying, were now allowed to have the same privilege of obtaining a visa on landing, bona fide, for 90 days.
Right.
As you mentioned in the opening, in the last 2 months, October and November, there have been a flurry of visitors, so-called, on charter flights, visiting South Africa ostensibly. Now, the first 2 flights were not really detected or put on the radar, but certainly the one, which I think was around the 2nd or 3rd of November, was when the crisis became apparent. And I mean, that was really a heart-wrenching decision to hold the passengers on board for over 13 hours. And it was only on the assurances of Gift of the Givers, who took steps to assure the department that the visitors would be accommodated, did the minister then say, for humanitarian reasons, is allowing a disembarkation of that flight. The conditions in which the travelers were held was absolutely atrocious and, in my mind, unlawful. There were 2 emergencies declared, a 9-month-old passenger, a passenger who was 9 months pregnant, and a minor child who had seizures. So we know the crisis that existed, and then it became apparent that, look, these are not bona fide travelers that have chartered a flight, in the normal way, right? Let's say there's a wedding in Sun City and an Indian family charters a flight, and they come in and they enjoy South Africa's hospitality, and after the wedding they go back. That's, it's a well-known charter activity, because the charterer has to assure the department that the people are taken care of, that they have accommodation, etc. The flight of 28 October simply deposited these people at ORT and took off. It was absolutely shocking when people that had come to South Africa were left, and some of them ended up in Hilaal and other areas which you in the normal course will not be visiting.
Sure.
And so we know now that flight 1 and 2 set out the pattern. And what was the pattern? The pattern was revealed in a Haaretz article and France 24. And it pointed to a internationally recognized, not recognized, registered, with very little assets, very little information, apparently inviting people from Gaza to leave. Now, some of these...
That's Al-Majd Europe you're talking about, if I stand to be corrected. Ashraf Essop, the organization,
Yeah, in the absence of any other information, that is how it was reported in Haaretz and News 24, which gave rise to concerns because some of these passengers were removed from Gaza. Now, you can't just leave Gaza.
Yeah.
They left Gaza, apparently by road, through the desert to Ramon Air Base. Ramon is split into military and civilians. And then from there transported by charter to Nairobi. And then from Nairobi, again, how they exited Nairobi or how they exited Gaza, which was one of the things that concerned everyone. Where's this exit stamp that you're supposed to have on your passport? We were fortunate that some of the people that have knowledge of how these stamps work and that generally don't support Palestinians were able to say that Israel doesn't give you an exit stamp.
Yeah.
They give you some kind of paper. But notwithstanding all that, these passengers were promised, in some cases, entry visas into other countries, interim transit visas to join their partners around the world. But the exit from Gaza was absolutely crucial to this whole exercise. Lots of money had passed hands.
Ashraf, I have to stop you there because I know there was an interview that you gave on another news agency a couple of weeks ago where you mentioned there had to be some way South Africa's government had to know about it. So whether it's Border Management Authority, whether it's AXA, whether it's Home Affairs, whether it's DIRCO, there needed to be some knowledge from a South African authority perspective on this. As we look at that media statement that was given out on Saturday, is that, and I'm trying to find the right words for this, sort of like a chickens coming home to roost scenario for South Africa in terms of them maybe not understanding the situation when that second flight had come, which of course what we saw at the OR Tambo International Airport, the big media attention that was given there.
Yeah, so I think let's deal with the first one first, right? Ever since the World Cup 2010, there's been a protocol in place.
Yeah.
And that protocol is the Advanced Passenger Manifest. Has to be sent to the Department of Home Affairs by the airlines. Otherwise, you won't be loaded. Now, the Home Affairs will simply put that name against a database and see, A, if you're carrying any serious diseases, or B, you overstayed previously, or you're doing something wrong. Absent that red flag, generally people are allowed in to South Africa. I mean, we've had something like 7 million visitors, according to BMA, in the last year. And tourism is growing, right? So South Africa doesn't necessarily police these things for irregularities. But these flags, but this time, given the fact that these people were not, by any stretch of the imagination, visiting South Africa as bona fide tourists. One, they didn't have exit stamps. Two, they didn't even know where South Africa was, some of them. I mean, this is not in every single case. 3, they were not given their luggage. There's no luggage. You came with the clothes on your back. 4, how do you load a 9-month-old pregnant woman onto a flight? That is against the international flight rules. 5, when they landed here, who gave the instruction that, look, this doesn't look like a regular charter flight. We're going to check this out. And as you know, on that day, there was a flurry of activity between civic organizations, Home Affairs, and ultimately they were disembarked at 10 o'clock at night on the authority of the minister. So this is the exact situation they were now trying to address, because the people involved in this whole thing that are emptying out Gaza with the promise of a home and another country that will accept them, etc., etc., are suddenly looking for thousands of passengers coming to South Africa on chartered flights. So as the minister said, the security cluster, the government, and a whole lot of other departments decided no. All Palestinians will now have to apply for a visa to return to visit South Africa. Now, when you apply for a visa, there's a number of documents that you have to fill out. For example, you've got to give proof that you have enough funds to visit as a bona fide visitor. So you have to have bank statements.
Ashraf,
now again, it's curious.
Ashraf, I have to stop you there, but where you are leaving on right now, where you stop right now, that's where we will continue the second segment, because we are going to be asking the question, what then for Palestinians who want to visit South Africa in the near future? My conversation with Ashraf Essop continues after the break. Welcome back to News in Focus. I'm still in conversation with immigration lawyer Ashraf Essop. Ashraf, apologies for rudely interrupting you there, but you were going to mention that any Palestinians who want to visit South Africa, what would they need to do in order to go ahead and earn that visa to visit the country?
So there's one regime, one size fits all. So you have visa exempt countries, and then you have countries that require their citizens to apply for a visa. Now, this is a curious case because there's no Palestinian country. You know, it's the divide between occupied Palestine under the PA or Gaza that now have been given passports. So what they are now expected to do, anyone with a Palestinian passport has to apply for a visa to come to South Africa. There's no embassy in Israel for them to send their documentation. So there's a whole checklist. Like I was saying, you have to give bank statements, proof of accommodation, a return air ticket. As you can imagine, none of these criteria applied previously to the passengers that landed. They were landed here on a one-way ticket, etc. So the only way the South African authorities could address this legally is to say, I'm withdrawing the privilege. It's not a right for you that you possess inherently to visit the Republic. It's a privilege, and now you have to apply the immigration laws. So technically, you're going to have to send your passport off either to Egypt or to Jordan, where our embassies are, and you have to comply with all the regulations, proof of your means, your travel accommodation, date of return, air ticket, etc., etc. So they will be treated like all other persons in the world that have to apply for a visa to come to South Africa. And I think the government then is going to say, from that cohort of people, who are the bona fide Palestinian visitors, and who are those that have been promised a new life and assisted by this international organization with large sums of money passing hands. The interesting thing is also the role of the airlines here, because we don't know which laws of aviation were breached. Was this human trafficking in a different form? Because you as a transporter, you have certain obligations, etc., etc.
Sure.
But now the position is, I mean, there are academics that were meant to come next week from Palestine to participate, etc. Everyone has to now apply for a visa. I understood only this morning that the effect was not immediate. It's apparently coming in on the effect on the 10th of December,
Right.
which the statement doesn't make clear to me. It said that the exemption has ended. So it's a rigorous process, believe me, to apply for a visa, to come to South Africa. And now there's visa costs. Before it was free.
Yeah.
So you can see the inequality there. And I mean, you have to ask the question, how are these people going to leave? Let's say I'm a traveler from Palestine, from Gaza. I'm coming to visit Table Mountain. How am I going to get out? How am I going to go through the Rafah crossing without the Egyptian authorities clearing me?
Yeah.
And then getting to Egypt, going to South African embassy. Now, there's two ways that the embassies could entertain applications. It could be online or it could be in personal visits. Online usually is outsourced to a company like VFS, Visa Facilitation Services, and that's the only way you can access the SA embassy. Then you have to send your original passport in, and then it's held for maybe 10 days. Now we're also in the holiday period, so there may be a scale down of operations. So you can imagine that such a decision, while on one ground thwarting the exploitation of people and promising them to come to South Africa as visitors and then disgorging their entire aeroplane here and then leaving it to South African authorities to sort out, as opposed to following the proper procedure to apply for a visa. There could have been a middle ground. For example, the directive could have said, look, in 30 days, I'm going to make this decision. You are invited to write to me. Remember, there's a precedent of these irrational decisions in the ZEP exemption permits that were refused overnight. They just said, we're not extending. And then that matter went to court, all the way to the Constitutional Court, and they've been given exemptions until June 2027. So people may be interested in taking this matter on review to the High Court and say the minister acted irrationally. For example, you can scale back and say those that are seem to be coming from charter, which has never happened before. You didn't have charter planes around the world just bringing Palestinians here. You could make the case that there was overreach in trying to cure the problem of people being trafficked on the promise of a better life. And of course, this is part of what Haaretz reported, that there was...
Ashraf,
yeah.
we've got about 6 minutes, and there's two important questions that I need to get
Sure.
in. So, Ashraf, there are about, in the two flights, there were close to 330 Palestinians who have come to South Africa. From your understanding, they obviously came with the premise that there would be this 90-day visa exemption, and of course, whatever followed after that, whether they would seek work, so on and so forth, would take aim. What happens now to those Palestinians who are in South Africa and their future with regards to the announcement that has happened from Home Affairs?
Well, their conditions don't change. It's not in retrospective effect. It simply said those coming in the future. Now, those that are here already have a bona fide 90-day visitor's visa extended to them at the airport with ministerial confirmation. Now, let's say if you come into South Africa and you want to apply for asylum, well, you got to be entertained at a counter. You meet the official and say, please, can I have a 5-day asylum transit visa? And in that 5 days, so you enter the Republic legally, the port of entry with a passport, you made your decision known, and the law kicks in, the Refugee Act says, well, you must be given that opportunity. And then you have 5 days to approach a refugee reception office. In this case, we have the Desmond Tutu RRO in Marabastad in Pretoria. And if those people have a desire to apply for asylum, they've got to make out the case. You know, asylum is not just for the asking. You've got to prove that you were fleeing some kind of internal or external conflict, that your life was at stake, that you were persecuted for political ends, etc., etc. Now we know there's a judgment that says there's a genocide going on, and you can't question that. I mean, this is independently established,
yeah,
from so many international organizations, and there's an interim judgment, and there's ICC as well, the International Criminal Court, which has put out warrants for arrests of the leaders of those countries. So they could argue, and obviously giving proper evidence as to what their own personal experiences were. Some of these passengers, I haven't interviewed them, but I've heard, were trapped under rubble for 2 or 3 days. I mean, that is going to be very formative of their application. Now, South Africa has an amazing piece of legislation in the way of the Refugees Act. So there's 2 things. It is very interesting. Now, let's say you left peacefully, but your conditions change back home. Then there's an application called Refugee Sur Place, and this is under consideration by the Constitutional Court at present. But there's a very important provision now that says if there is a possibility of you being harmed, killed, or your property taken away, etc., then there is the principle of non-refoulement. You cannot be sent back unless the South African government is able to get an absolute assurance from that country that you fled, that you will not be harmed. Now again, technically, as some of these people have pointed out, they never fled the Palestinian Authority. So you can't be saying, going back there under the protection, because you never fled from them. You fled external aggression and internal disability. And we've spoken about genocide, etc.
Ashraf, so based on this, and we just got 2 minutes left, can these current Palestinians that are here, but also future Palestinians who, of course, are escaping Gaza based on the genocide that is happening there, would the opportunity for them to apply for asylum still exist, given the changes that we have seen now from Home Affairs?
Yeah, if you come legally into the South African border, like there was 180 Afghanis that were supposedly touring Zimbabwe about a year ago, and they were deposited at our border post in Beitbridge and said, knock, knock, we're here for asylum. Home Affairs refused. The Afghanis went to court. They got a court order. They were admitted for asylum. So our laws are very, very generous and protective of asylum seekers. Can the others that wish to come, well, as long as they get to South Africa legally, which now, as you know, you need a visa. But let's say you're illegal in the country. This again, the Refugee Act is absolutely amazing. You then have to apply for a thing called good cause. And you have to say, look, I couldn't get to a port of entry legally. I couldn't apply for an asylum transit visa. But here's good cause. Here's why I had to flee. And can you now give me an opportunity to apply for asylum? And the law is very clear on that. You must be given that opportunity to file a good cause application. And if it's reasonable, you'll be given good cause. And then you'll be admitted to, or you'll be allowed to go to an RRO and make an application. So there's a lot of protection still in place. I think that's the problem that we're going to be facing. That how are these applicants going to satisfy the requirement of a visitor's visa? And that is still to be seen.
Ashraf Essop, always good having you on. Shukran so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam. Thank you.
That's Ashraf Essop, immigration lawyer, just breaking down the announcement from Home Affairs over the weekend. Well, that's all we have for you on News in Focus. From myself, Faraz Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.